You rewind back to October 14th. Before Michigan and Ohio State played a tremendous game, this was the game of the year. The Oregon Ducks went to Seattle and played an instant classic against the Washington Huskies. It was Washington on the winning end of the stick that week, but now you have a neutral site game with everything on the line. The rematch between the Oregon Ducks and the Washington Huskies at a neutral site in Las Vegas in the final Pac-12 game that we're going to see, the Pac-12 championship game. Now, that was a fantastic game. It was an awesome game. But since then, there's a story to be told. But since then, there is a second half story to be told with these two ball clubs. Down the stretch, I don't know if anybody is playing better than the Oregon Ducks. Oregon is a complete team. Oregon is a great team. Oregon is a team that can win a national championship. I firmly believe that. They've got a Heisman Trophy contender at quarterback. If I'm a Heisman voter, I'm checking the box for Bo Nix. That's where I'm at right now. I think the second half of this season that he's had, I think has put him above Michael Penix. And yeah, let's put him above Jalen Daniels. Let's give him the Heisman Trophy. That's where I'm at right now with Bo Nix. But as a team, Oregon has been much more impressive the back half of the season, and the Huskies and the Ducks have some pretty common opponents, and Oregon has fared better against those opponents than the Washington Huskies. Oregon's margin of victory the back half of the season, 25.5 points per game, whereas Washington has won games by an average margin of 6.5 points per game. You look at the Washington Huskies, 1 week off of that huge win. They got a struggle game against a not good Arizona State team. It's been a really deep Pac-12 this season. Arizona State, right? They're towards the bottom. They're towards the bottom, but a 15-7 win 1 week after that big win against Oregon. Stanford ended up being a 3-win team. And remember, Stanford needed a huge comeback to become a 3-win team to beat Colorado. Remember that if Colorado had any semblance of a football team, that'd be a 2-win team. Washington gave up 33 points to the Cardinal, a 42-33 win over the Stanford Cardinal. You look at late in the season, Oregon State, I know it was weather, I know it was on the road, I know Oregon State is a decent team, but that was a 2-point close win for the Washington Huskies. And then the Apple Cup against Washington State, needing a walk-off field goal at home to defeat their rival in the Cougars. This Washington team has not been overly impressive, but, and there's always a but there's something to be said of going 9-0 in the extremely deep Pac-12 conference this year. There's something to be said winning close games. Maybe you don't play your best, but you find a way to win late in a football game. I think where the microcosm of both of these teams in the back half of the season can be told through their quarterbacks. Bo Nix in the final 6 games of the year has thrown for over 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns and just 1 interception since that loss to Washington. Michael Penix Jr. has thrown for just under 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, and has turned the football over 5 times in the year, 5 interceptions since that game against the Oregon Ducks. So go the quarterbacks, so go these teams. And quarterback play could determine what happens within this college football game as well. The last thing I want to touch on in really comparing these teams, let's talk about the common opponents. They both played Utah. Oregon went on the road to Rice Eccles, tough place to play. They blew them out 35-6. Washington at home, 35-28, 1-possession game. Washington State, both of these teams got the Cougs at home. Oregon beat them by 14. Washington walked off with a field goal. Oregon State, I understand the weather there, but Oregon dominated them 31-7, a 2-point win for the Huskies. USC, Oregon, 36-27 at home. But that Washington team, USC was moving the ball up and down the field against that Washington defense. I can talk about these stats. I can talk about these comparisons until I'm blue in the face, but it's the eye test for me. When I watch these two teams play, I see the complete team that Oregon is. Washington is really good at throwing the ball up and down the field. We know what Washington's strength is. There's multiple strengths on this Oregon football team. Something about Michael Penix down the stretch just hasn't clicked. Not sure what it is, but Michael Penix just doesn't seem to be the same quarterback that he was early in the season. All right, let's talk about this football game because it's going to be a fantastic college football game. I believe Oregon has an advantage if they can Big Ten this game up. Oregon has one of the very best offensive lines in college football. You're going to be a Big Ten member, Oregon? Let's play like it. Dominate the line of scrimmage. And this is crazy because they got a Heisman Trophy quarterback. But dominate the line of scrimmage and run the ball. Bucky Irving, Jordan James, they've got really good talent in the backfield. You go back to that Washington game. I thought some of their best parts to that Washington game, their best segments, their best series of plays, things like that, was the run game when Oregon kind of got that going at times. Oregon rushed for 204 yards, 5.1 yards per carry in that Washington game. This is a very balanced Oregon football team. If they can limit the possessions of Washington, dominate the time of possession up front, it puts more pressure on Washington to take advantage of those possessions. You limit the amount of possessions that Washington has, that's a win to me for Oregon. Establish the line of scrimmage right away. Bo Nix can throw. Okay, you're always going to have the threat of Bo Nix throwing the ball down the field, the guys like Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson and others. But I think the real edge for the Oregon Ducks could be running the football and really being great at the point of attack in this game. And then you look at Washington's defense, I think there's an advantage there up front for Oregon if they can establish that physicality right away in this game. Let's talk about it from the Washington point of view. Let's rewind once again to that game in Seattle on October 14th. Washington got going early. Their offense, specifically Michael Penix, and their passing offense was clicking early. And that opened up some run lanes later that allowed them to be a little bit more balanced. Washington, get your playmakers in space. You've got a fantastic, one of the best wide receiving groups in all of college football. Take advantage of it. Whether it be the short passing game, medium, long, whatever route concepts you want to do, get this passing game going early. This is not a Washington team that can line up at the line of scrimmage like probably Oregon, and that can run the football and run the football and run the football. Nor do they want to. They know what their strength is. Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, they know that throwing the ball down the field with Michael Penix is what can win them a Pac-12 title, is what can get them into the playoff, and then who knows what happens from there. You need to get your playmakers in space. You need to make it a track meet. Now, Oregon can play in a track meet. Oregon can score with some of the best teams in college football. But Washington, you need to score. You need to make a few stops like that USC game, right? That was a back and forth. Nobody could stop anybody. But Washington made a few stops down the stretch. 52-42 was the final score against the Trojans. That's the type of game. You need to get that offense in rhythm. You look at some of these games since that Oregon game. Not a lot of times. You could throw, the USC game is one of them, but there's been some games where this offense hasn't been quite the same. It hasn't been quite in rhythm. This is a game where you need to get that rhythm back. This is a game where you need to throw and throw and throw. Maybe soften up that defense, and that's where some Dylan Johnson run lanes could possibly open up, and then you can get more balanced throughout this game as well. Because Oregon's got the 7th-ranked rush defense in the country. They're really good at that. Oregon's really good up front. Oregon was able to get some pressure on Michael Penix earlier this season when they played back in Seattle. And Oregon needs to hit Michael Penix on defense. You can't allow him to sit there. You can't allow him to get in a rhythm and move the ball up and down the field, and that opens up the whole offense, which I just touched on as well. We know it's going to be a great game. Look, I know Washington hasn't looked great as of late, but in a one-game scenario, let's see if Washington can possibly get it together and get some rhythm and momentum going on down the field. One more thing about Oregon. There's a lot of great receivers at Washington. We talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., a lot of great receivers in college football. I think one guy that's not talked about as much and should be talked about more is Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, very underrated. 3rd in the country in receiving yards. He's 1st among Pac-12 wide receivers in receiving yards. That includes Roma Dunze. That includes some of the other good receivers out there out west in the Pac-12. Very underrated, very good. Of course, you got Tez Johnson in there as well. Washington fans, I just think Oregon's a more complete team. That's just the way I see it right now. I think they're better up front. I think they're better in the run game. There could be a path for Washington to win if they can make this game fast and get up and down the field and make a couple of stops in this football game. That's their path to victory. I can't imagine them bucking up and running the football. Okay, I just that's not a scenario that plays out in my head. I can see Oregon doing it because I believe they're more balanced, and I believe the Ducks are more of a complete team. But no matter what happens, I think it's still going to be a great football game. Even though Oregon has been playing better down the stretch than Washington, I think you're going to get up for this game, and you're going to get both teams' best shot, and the winner clinches a spot in the college football playoff.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.